Hey, Josh here, aka Olufemii, and I'm here in this beautiful office. Kirk, say hey.
Hey.
Kirk is the first Olufemii Tutorials channel intern, and both of us together are going to tell you how to edit in Adobe Premiere.
So Adobe Premiere is by far the most popular video editing software in the world. And assuming that you've never edited a video before in your life, this video is for you.
Alright guys, so the Adobe Premiere interface is so crazy easy. You're gonna open it up, it's gonna look all confusing, but if you just remember that it all boils down to 4 different quadrants, you're gonna realize that there isn't really a lot that you're dealing with. We're not set designers, but we thought that this centerpiece just kind of kept the room classy. Let's get back into it. Adobe Premiere. You can't see, but the computer's actually below the camera. Kirk is gonna be controlling the computer as I'm explaining. So the first thing that you do is you click on Premiere. You now have something called the new project window. You're going to go and label your project what you want it. Then you're going to click browse and you're going to place it in the location that you want it to be saved on your computer. As far as the renderer goes, you're going to have 2 options, either the Mercury Playback Engine GPU Acceleration CUDA or the software only option. You're going to be able to use CUDA if you have a strong enough graphics card. If your graphics card sucks, you're going to only have the software only version. That's fine for now. Just do CUDA if you can. Then click OK. Okay, Premiere is now opening, and voila, 4 quadrants. Crazy. So check this out. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go into the project window, and we're going to right click and we're going to do import. Once you click import, you're going to be able to choose which clips you want to import. So we're going to now import a clip. Now, you're actually probably not going to only just import one clip, because the point of video editing is to actually edit a bunch of clips together to create one final video project. So let's import a few more. You're going to realize that we're actually doing this tutorial on a PC, not a Mac. You're going to realize though that this process is going to look almost exactly the same on a Mac, and I would advise you to think about maybe switching to PC. Windows is actually a better editing operating system, I feel like, if you're going to choose to edit in Premiere. More on that in another video. Guys, you're going to see all these extra tabs in place. I don't usually use those, so we're going to actually clear them. So what you do is you just right click and then you do close panel. I'm going to close the media browser. I'm going to close the libraries. I'm going to close info, markers, and history. So we're just going to be left with the project tab and the effects tab in the project window. So now we have these long clips in our project window. Now we need to choose the portion of the clips that we want to edit in our final video. So what we're going to do is we're going to double click on one of the clips, and bam, you're going to now see that it comes up in the window on top called the source window. So now we've gone over half of the entire interface, the project window and the source window. What does the source window do? Well, you realize that through the source window, you can actually scrub through the length of the entire clip. Now, in order to choose the part of the clip that you want, you're going to use both the I and the O keys. I stands for in, O stands for out, or you can use this button and this button. This specifies the start and the end of the clip that you're going to choose. Once you've gotten that figured out, you're going to drag the clip down into this window in the bottom right hand corner called the timeline window, and you have 3 choices. You can either drag the entire clip down by just clicking on the video and dragging it down, or you can drag just the video down by clicking on the video icon, or you can drag just the audio down by dragging on the audio icon. And now we come to the 3rd window, the timeline window. The timeline window is really interesting. It's where the main edit takes place and where all of the different portions of the clips in your project window come together, and where you cut them up and where you arrange them. So the timeline window is actually separated into 2 parts, the video tracks and the audio tracks. The video tracks start at V1 and they go on to, I believe you can go up to V99. You can have 99 different video tracks. The audio tracks go down in the other direction. It starts at A1 and I believe it can go all the way down to A99. Now, what you realize is that the actual edit in the timeline window takes place in different tabs. Each of these tabs are called sequences, and you can actually have as many sequences as you want. Now, in order to create a new sequence, you're going to go into the project window, you're going to right click, go to new item, and then you're going to click sequence. you're then going to have the option of naming the sequence and choosing its sequence settings. What are sequence settings? Sequence settings are the resolution, meaning the number of pixels in the X and the Y direction, as well as the frame rate that the sequence is going to abide by. What you're going to want to make sure is that the sequence settings match the clip settings. So say you have a video that was shot at a resolution of 1920 1080 and was at 24 frames per second. You're going to want your sequence settings to match those clip settings. Here's an easy way to make sure that those sequence settings match the clip settings. Just literally name your sequence, click OK, and don't even worry about setting the sequence settings. Put your first clip into the sequence, and if the sequence settings don't match, Premiere will warn you, click OK, and it will automatically change your sequence settings to match your clip settings. Okay guys, so we have one last window, the fourth window that we're going to cover. It's called the program window, and this has to do with your playhead. Your playhead is something that's in your timeline window. The position of your playhead on your timeline window is going to be visually represented via your program window. So through the program window, you're able to actually see what your edit looks like. A few things to consider as far as your playhead goes. Number one, your playhead will only be able to see the top video. So say you have two video clips that are on top of each other, your playhead will only see the video on top. That's actually not the case for audio though. If you play through a bunch of audio, you're actually going to hear all of the audio that your playhead is playing through at the same time. All right, guys, so we have covered all four quadrants. You did it. You're almost an expert in Adobe Premiere. We want to cover a few more different things just to cover all of our bases. The next thing we want to talk about are the actual tools that you can use to edit in your timeline. The most common tool you're going to use here in Adobe Premiere is probably the selection tool. The selection tool is what you use just to select stuff, whether it be clips or anything, and it is V on the keyboard if you want to use the hotkey. The second most common tool that you're probably going to use is the blade. It's what you use to cut clips. The blade is C on the keyboard. And another tool you're probably going to use is the type tool, or T as the hotkey on the keyboard. It's basically what you use to create text. Okay, so we're actually in a new project now. I've dropped a few random clips down into the timeline, and we're going to do an example video edit, because sometimes the best way to learn is to actually just do it. So we have 4 video clips, and Kirk, you're going to play through them real quick. Sounds so bad. Sounds horrible. Basically, it was in-camera audio that was being used. We're not going to end up really even using the audio. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you that in the timeline, you can actually choose to mute audio, or you can actually do something called solo audio. So check this out. You can either click the M, that will mute the audio. So as you can see, we can play it and it becomes mute. Or you can solo audio by clicking on S. So because we don't have multiple audio tracks, you can't actually see this working, but basically this S means that this single track will be solo. So say we had a ton of different audio tracks with audio on it, only this track would be heard when you play through it. Now the same thing can be said for the video. If you go to video, you can actually blind tracks. So say you don't want to see this track, V1, you can actually blind it by clicking on the eye, and it will make that track disappear. Check this out. I'm going to put this clip on top of this clip. Now remember, you can only see the clip that is on top when you're talking about video clips. But say you actually don't want to see this clip that you're seeing on top. Say you want to see the clip on the bottom. You can blind this clip on top, and then suddenly you're going to see this clip on the bottom. So let's go into this track and talk about something called video effects and audio effects. So we're going to click on this clip, and you're going to go back into this thing called the source window, if you remember. Now the source window is a little bit different. We didn't tell you, but you can actually look at different tabs in the source window. So instead of looking at the footage, you can actually go into the effects control tab and actually check out the effects that are actually on the clip. Let's click on it again. And so what we're going to do is we're going to click on the clip, and we're going to go back into the source window. Now usually the source window is where you actually can see what the clip looks like, but we didn't actually tell you that there's another tab that you can click on called effect controls. Correct. So effect controls is click on the clip again, double click on it, and inside effect controls you can actually see both video effects and audio effects that you can actually use to manipulate the clip. So each clip has default video effects and default audio effects, and we'll tell you a little bit later how you can add even more effects on to that via another window. But let's just look at the default effects for now. For the video effects, we have motion, and inside of motion, you have position. Within position, you can change the position of the clip in the X direction and in the Y direction. You can reset to the default position by clicking on this. You can go into scale as well. 100 is just normal. You can go down to make it smaller, or zoom in by using a value or parameter that's over 100. Let's go reset it to the default parameter again. Rotation, you can of course rotate as well. Let's reset it. Let's go to opacity. Opacity enables you to change the transparency of your clip. This is interesting. I'm not going to click on the stopwatch yet. The stopwatch is something called keyframing, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. But for now, let's just talk about the transparency. It's at 100% right now. Anything less than 100% is going to be less and less transparent. Let's do this. Let's put this clip on top of this clip again. Now we're going to put the playhead on top of this clip. Now we're going to change the opacity down to 50%. Now what you're actually seeing is half of this clip and half of the clip underneath it. It's actually at 47%, but you get the point. Pretty cool. Now we're going to go into audio effects. And the only audio effect that we're going to really cover is the volume. Go into volume, and you can change the level of the volume to make it louder or softer, quieter. Here is the next thing we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the other effects that you can actually put on your clip. There are other video effects and other audio effects that you can put on your clip. We're going to go back down into the project window. There is another tab that we didn't talk about called effects that you can actually go into. We're going to go into first video effects. And as you can see, there are all sorts of different effect options. Let's go into blur. Click on Gaussian blur. We're going to do this first. We're going to drag Gaussian blur over to our clip. As you can see, when we put an effect onto our clip, it now appears in effect controls up here in this window. So now we have all of the normal effects, such as, the position, the scale, everything under motion. We have opacity. And now added to that is Gaussian blur. So you can now ramp up that parameter, make it as blurry as you want. I want to show you guys a little something. This effects panel is always going to have the same effects on it. It's never going to change. But this effects control panel changes according to the clip that you're actually clicked on. So right now we're clicked on this clip. If we go to click on this other clip, that Gaussian blur effect is going to disappear because we only applied it to this clip. So effects controls is dependent on the specific clip that you're actually clicked on. There are a bunch of other effects that you can use as far as video goes. Color correction, distort, noise and grain. That's a lot of stuff that you can go in and just figure out yourself. They're really intuitive, and some of them are very useful. Some of them aren't really that useful. We're going to go into audio effects now. Audio effects has a ton of different options that you can choose. We're going to go more in depth as far as audio effects in later tutorials. And if you actually click on the channel, there's actually some really sick tutorials already in place that you can take a look at. Now, the next thing that we're going to talk about is something called transitions. There are transitions that are within Premiere that you can use to stylistically transition from one clip to another clip. Let's check them out. If you go into video transitions, we're going to go and we're going to show you the most common transition I think that we all use. Go into dissolve, go into cross dissolve, and we're going to zoom in on our timeline. You can zoom in by clicking the plus key, hotkey on the keyboard. We're going to go right in between where these two clips touch each other. Oops, let's actually take this blur effect off. Delete. Cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to put cross dissolve in between these two clips. There we go. And as you can see, it slowly dissolves between each clip as opposed to hard cutting. I'm going to take this cross dissolve off. And I'm going to show you this is a hard cut. And that's different than the smooth cross dissolve. There are tons of different other transitions you can use. I'm not going to go through them. You can check them out on your own time. Let's go to audio transitions. Most common audio transition is called constant power. I'm going to drag constant power in between both tracks. And as you can see, you're going to be able to smoothly transition from one clip to the audio of the other clip. All right, guys, so I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to add a title. All you got to do is click on the title tool or click T on the keyboard. And as you can see here, I'm going to just do this. I'm going to call this my first video. Yay. Cool. Okay, so as you can see, as soon as you start typing, a title clip basically appears out of nowhere. And then through this clip, you're able to click on your title. And this title basically acts like a standalone clip, basically. It says my first video on the clip when you change the title text actually inside. So let's go to the effects controls. And as you can see, just like a clip, you can do anything that you want as far as the motion. You can position it where you want. You can even scale it as you want. Before I even touch this though, I go into the text effect options. This is actually where I go first. So I actually I actually usually change the font first. I want the font to be Din Ot. I'm not quite sure how you pronounce that, but it's what I use for any kind of title you see on my channel is going to use that font. You can also go inside the text effects and actually change the size here as well. Yeah, there you go. I want to actually show you guys. You see these things right here. These are called safety margins. This is not actually going to be on your actual video. This is something that's actually just on the screen that I put on by clicking on the wrench. You can go and toggle it on or off. I usually like to keep it on when I'm doing titling because, as you can see, it allows you to center things. So let's go into motion. I'm clicked on the title clip, and I'm going to go into position and position this perfectly. Okay, then I'm going to turn my safety margins off. It's kind of been on this whole time. And one thing I forgot to tell you. So you know about the blade tool. You can cut this and go to your selection tool and then use the delete key to delete that. But another thing that you can do as far as cutting footage is you can actually hover your mouse on the edge of any kind of clip, whether it's a text clip or a regular footage clip, and you can actually extend it like that, and you can cut it like that. So it's pretty cool. You can change the length of it that easy. You can do the same thing for clips as well. Control Z to undo what I just did. Okay, so there we go. I'm going to make this a little bit shorter, and as you see, I can press play right here, and that's my video. Okay, so what I actually want to do is I want to mute this because I don't want to hear that ugly sound for now. And I'm going to go and zoom in, and I want this to fade in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my video transitions, and I'm going to go to dissolve, and I'm going to put the cross dissolve on the edge of the clip. Okay, and as you can see, it's going to fade in. I'm going to show you guys a little trick. I'm going to delete that. If you actually right click on the edge of the clip and then you say apply default transition, that cross dissolve is going to automatically be put there. It's the same thing. Cool. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this text clip over here. I'm going to put a cross dissolve at the beginning. There we go. Apply the default transition at the beginning of that clip. The default transition is constant power for the audio and cross dissolve for the video, right? And so it basically puts it on both. I'm going to put a cross dissolve on the edge of this as well. Now I'm going to fade into this title, then fade out, and then fade into the video. Fade out of the title and fade into the video. It's pretty cool. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a awesome song because I hate the in-camera audio. And I'm going to put that song on A2, the second audio track. So let's do that real quick. Okay, I have now gotten a song. I'm going to pick an in and an out point, and I'm going to bring that song down into A2 audio track. Perfect. Beautiful. Let's go and put a constant power transition on the edge of that music so it fades in. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. And almost kind of hit those beats too. Okay, cool. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to put a little fade right there. Let's take this constant power out because we're not even using this track. It's muted, so it really doesn't matter what transitions or effects we put on this audio. We're only listening to this track because if you remember, we've muted this track, A1, and the only other track with audio on it is A2, so we're hearing that track. Let's listen to it again. And watch out for this cross dissolve. Check that out. It's pretty cool, right? It's going to be a hard cut right there. Alright guys, that was the simplest video in the world. The last thing I think that we need to show you is how to export. Before we export, I'm just going to trim this clip a little bit. Bam. Let's go to the edge. Let's fade out appropriately. There we go. There we go. And what we got to do is we got to tell Premiere what part of the timeline that we want to export. So what we're going to do is I'm going to hold Shift down. And I'm going to put my playhead up against, holding Shift down basically allows the playhead to snap to the edge of whatever clip that you want it to snap against. So I'm going to do I for my endpoint. I'm going to go to the edge of the edit and click O while holding Shift down. And now I have my endpoint and my outpoint enveloping just the part of the timeline that I want to export, which is just of the clips. So now I'm going to go to File. I'm going to go to Export. I'm going to go to Media. And oh my goodness, this looks so confusing, right? You want to make sure that your source range is sequenced in and out so that you are only exporting between in and out. And then we have a few different options. It's easier than you think. And I'm not going to go crazy in depth because that's going to be for another video. But what you got to realize is you're probably going to want to use a codec that's H.264. H.264 is a codec. A codec is basically telling Premiere the amount of compression that you want it to do on your video clip. If you compress a clip too much, it's going to be nice and small and easy to upload to the internet, but it's not going to have a lot of information, and so it's not going to look as good. If you don't compress it enough, it's going to be a lot bigger of a clip. It's going to be a lot harder to upload because it's going to be like, you know, something like 5-6 gigs or 10 gigs or something crazy big. You will have a lot more information though, so it'll look, the video quality will be better. H.264 will do all the math for you. So as far as format is determining the codec that you're going to be using to export out. Just go to H.264 always. And then after that, don't worry about preset. Then go to the output name. You're going to choose, let's just put it on our desktop for now. Don't ever do that usually. You want to organize your files on a hard drive, external hard drive usually. We're going to name it test just because we're not that creative. We're going to go do save. And now you want to make sure that you're exporting both your video and exporting both your audio. And then we're going to go down to here. And you're going to, actually before you do that, realize that your output name is test. It automatically makes it an MP4 file that you're exporting. That's just what Premiere does when you choose an H.264 codec. The MP4 ending is something called a container. It really doesn't mean a lot, and I'm not going to go into it, but just know that you want to use an MP4 container in an H.264 codec, usually 90% of the time when you're exporting out of Premiere. You're going to go into the video tab. Don't worry about any of these other tabs yet. And you're going to just make sure your width and your height are correct and match your video clip. As you know, this clip was a 1920 by 1080 clip, so it's perfect. If this is wrong, then you just unclick this check and you can change it. Okay. And then you're going to scroll down, make sure your frame rate is the same as your clip, 24 frames per second. If it's not, then you change it. But basically, your export settings are going to usually always match your sequence settings. And at the beginning, you realized you made sure that your sequence settings matched your clip settings. So it's most likely that your export settings are going to be just fine, and you don't really have to change much as long as you do exactly what I'm saying. You don't really need to actually change any of these grayed out settings usually. Usually you are A-OK If you are down for it, you can do render at maximum depth. It'll take a little bit longer to render, but it may be worth it if you have the extra time and if you have a powerful computer. Another thing that you can do as far as bitrate is you can choose to do 2-pass. That will just make the video quality be better as far as the compression process that it uses. Target bitrate, I usually leave mine at 10. I leave my maximum bitrate at 12. Everything else don't really worry about. As far as audio, just kind of leave it on its default settings. I use it on right now it's on AAC. That's going to be perfect. Bit sample rate 48,000 hertz is perfect. Use the AAC codec like I said before. Use stereo as far as the channels go, and you should be great. After that, don't really worry about anything else, guys, and just click export. And voila, what you've done is you've taken a bunch of clips, you've put them in Premiere, you've edited them in the timeline, and then you have completed your edit and you've exported them out of Premiere using the correct export settings, and you've basically compressed them into one single video, and that's your exported final video. Yep. Congratulations, you have just become a video editor. Leave your name and location on my Instagram, made by Olufemii, and I promise to give your profile a little peek.